Another thing that I wanted to show you is the use of notes as part of the action line. I'll show you what I mean. Let's look at page 34. This is an important scene in the screenplay. This is the library. And, you know, if you and I were writing this, you know, I'll just say what I would do. If I were writing this scene, I try to, if I know it's going to be a place we're going to be for a while, you know, you definitely want to set the mood, set the setting, describe what it looks like. And you want to do it in as few words as possible to keep the screenplay moving. So I would probably put in maybe 3 or 4 lines, maybe drop some more information in a different action line. And that is the very classic way to do it. But here, they did it as a list. And this is really interesting. When they go into the library, it says, here are a few things you may notice immediately. Number 1, the books. And then they talk about it. It's almost like a dictionary entry. Number 2, the lectern, and it describes it. Number 3, the wife, which, you barely see her, but it describes it. Number 4, the red curtain. Number 5, the altar, and it describes it. Number 6, the 2 doors. So they didn't just list these 6 things, they numbered them. So that tells you right away that they want you to see these things one at a time. First see the books, then the lectern. So they're building off of each other until you get to the last one, which is the doors. And you're like, uh-oh. It says, number 6, the 2 doors, both on the far wall, they are closed and crudely painted 2 different colors, yellow door, purple door, and this, we talked about this earlier, where the fonts and the highlights show you those 2 characteristics. Bold choice. Beck and Woods, not afraid to make some interesting and bold choices. Now we're going to go on to some of the action lines that I think are just really brilliant. And this is an important thing to do in dissecting a screenplay. Pull out what you appreciate and honor it. So that's what we're going to do here. Page 39 is the first one. We're just going to look at 3 real quick. This is Mr. Reed has just given some information, and the action line says, if Reed is trying to make them feel comfortable, he has failed. The thought of a house designed to stop a phone from making calls is very clearly nightmare fuel. So that's an interesting way of putting it. I get this feeling when I read that as a reader, I'm being included in the story. Like, hey, it's like a nudge. Hey, this is nightmare fuel. This is some serious stuff. Next one's page 44. And this one is really cheeky and interesting. Mr. Reed is giving them some more information to think about. And then the action line is, a moment of silence for all the awkward, upset feelings swirling around the room. So it's like, again, cluing us in on how they're feeling. It's doing its job as an action line, but it's done in a very unique and interesting way to include us as the reader. And then 46, this is the most important one, I think. Mr. Reed says, as part of his dialogue here, I think it's something you should consider carefully and then make the right decision. Do you want me to help you? And the action line is, what can they even fucking say to that question at this point other than, and then you've got the dual dialogues. So I really like that, how he said, what could they say at this point? So again, we're no longer at the perspective of the characters. We're back at the perspective of the reader. And this happens throughout the screenplay. But what also is interesting about this is a place where Beck and Woods have chosen to give the characters agency again, which is an interesting buzzword going around right now, but it's not a new concept. It is that we want characters who have a say in what's going on in the story. We don't want things to just happen to them. And if you think about it, in the beginning, they had a lot of agency. They chose to go to that door, even though they really weren't supposed to. They chose to go inside, even though they really weren't supposed to. They made some bad choices. They even chose to be polite when they knew deep down they needed to get away. So after that, though, when you go back into the library, into this scene, they then begin to lose their agency because they're held captive. So now, just with this one line at least, subconsciously we are giving the choice back to the character and saying, do you want my help? You can say no. Another artistic choice that they make is cascading action lines. This is something I like to do, and I was really pleased to see it in this script. So let's look at page 98. You'll see how the action lines in the middle of the page build downward, and it's a great way to illustrate that we're getting information. I like to do this. It's beautiful. It's artistic. But it needs to have a purpose. And this purpose is to say we're gaining information. First, we see the blood. Then we see the blood falling. Then we see the blood falling down. Then we see the blood falling down Sister Barnes. Then we see the blood falling down Sister Barnes' neck from a gaping wound. So it's beautiful on the page because the lines are cascading out. I often try to cascade them back down as well if it makes sense. But I really did appreciate that they did that there. Another thing they do in this screenplay that you don't see every day is a postscript. So after the screenplay, they include some information, which is great. I believe they may have done this in The Quiet Place too. And but the really funny part is the last thing of the postscript, and it says here, the collection influenced the author's understanding of the topics discussed in the screenplay. It must be said that the characters have minds of their own and only speak for themselves. That's a funny thing to say, but we all know it's true. I mean, all the characters we create come from our subconscious, whether we like it or not, all of their good traits, bad traits. And but once they're alive on the page, they really do. They are who they are, because you have to be true to who that character is if you're actually going to build a real character. And he's saying here, don't come at me about Christianity or religion or Mormonism. That's what they said, not me. So I think that Beck and Woods, they could easily be comedy writers, the way they incorporate some stuff into their screenplay.